Hello, everyone. I can see everyone's just coming in at the moment. So good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining us today for the second webinar in our Central Laravel Developer Skills for Successful End-to-End Project Delivery series. For anyone who's a newbie, just a quick introduction to myself. I'm Dan. I'm going to be your host for this series of webinars. You may have come to our one last month with Sylvain, our CDO, which is much more of an introduction to the series as a whole, and was very much looking at his own journey from that front-end, back-end developer position through to being a CTO and then finally a Chief Delivery Officer. If you haven't caught up with that webinar yet, don't worry, it is on YouTube at the moment, and after the session today, you will be shared a link to that one as well. I really recommend catching up with that. It was a really great webinar. But on to today. So today, we're going to be talking about how developers can help deliver winning pitches and aid new business. And this can be presented by our new business director, Tom Millson. But just before I pass on to him, I have a few introductory and house rules slides to go through. And this would also just give a chance for anyone who's a bit late to join us before we get into the main part of today's session. So for those of you who are new, welcome to CyberDuck. You might not know this, but actually CyberDuck is Laravel's first official UK accredited partner. And I guess if you were to ask us why we do what we do, well, our goal as a digital agency is to make the web and websites and digital products more accessible and user-friendly to a wide variety of different users. And we look to achieve this by working really closely with our partners and our clients to redesign and rebuild their content, their websites, and their digital products, so that they are more accessible, they're more user-friendly, and then they're served by better open source technology like Laravel. And then this is all underpinned by processes in UX and SEO and DevOps. And you can see on this slide just here a few of the different clients we've worked with, from the NHS, Bosch, Sport England, Cadbury's, Gov UK, Compare the Market, and also the Commonwealth. And I think that leads nicely onto why we started to do this new series of webinars. So over the last 16, 17, 18 years, and actually even longer, our team of ducks have been growing their skills and expertise and knowledge and processes in the kind of world of Laravel development and wider development. And now we really want to share this with the wider world, particularly with other developers who want to grow and elevate these skills outside of pure development. So what is this looking like? Well, over the coming months, we'll be looking to run a webinar on sort of a different stage of the project lifecycle. So our webinar, as I said earlier, last month was much more of an introduction to the series as a whole, how as a developer, you can start to build up these different skills and these different areas and kind of grow your career. Today, we'll be talking much more around pitching and getting involved with new business. And then in later webinars, you'll hear us talk about areas such as the wider project management, agile, UX, accessibility, and the way to work with other teams, and much more. If you're ever not able to make one of these webinars, don't worry. Each of these sessions are recorded. We make sure to share them with everyone who's registered. And alongside this, you also may get some additional material from us. For instance, if we're talking about accessibility, we've done lots of webinars and articles in the past. And if it's relevant, we find to the talk, we might share this with you as well. And just to jump on some other bits for today then. So quick house rules. We've got about 40 minutes for today's session. The presentation Tom will be doing is going to last around 20 minutes or so. And then after that, we'll have questions and answers for everyone. So if you have any questions for Tom, best way to do this is to use the Q&A feature. So at the bottom of your screen, you see a little Q&A button. If you click on that, it'll pop open a Q&A kind of screen. You can just ask any questions there. And so we'll get round to those at the end of today's session. But you can also reach us out on social media. So at the end of the presentation, we have all of our different kind of accounts for Twitter and LinkedIn. But otherwise, feel free to tweet us using the hashtag LaraDuck. And as I said, at the I think it'll be next week, we'll share out the full recording of today's session. And just a couple of last bits. Captions are available if you need these. If they're not already turned on for you, you can switch these on via the transcript button located at the bottom of your screen. And look, as we all know, automated captions are great, but they're not perfect. So we do make sure that always our on-demand versions have these manually edited captions as well. And that's it from me for now. So I'm going to say a big hello to Tom, who is going to give you your presentation for today.
Hello, thank you, Dan, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in front of you all today, and I really can't wait to share how developers like you can boost your skills to help deliver winning pitches and support the sales process. I'd like to start today by giving you a very quick introduction to who I am. So I actually started my career in digital as a hobbyist developer, interestingly enough, and I was always someone that was into business as a career, but without a real clear direction on where I wanted to go. But my start came at the time, probably about 15 years ago now, when app stores were really starting to hit their stride, and I wanted a slice of the action. So while I was studying my business management degree, I decided to teach myself how to code iPhone apps. And that led me to building an augmented reality golf game with mapping, geolocation, and accelerometers. Quite similar in concept to Pokemon Go, but this was 5 years before it came out. So really kind of like early version. But I encountered something that I now know every developer experiences, and that's frustration with fixing bugs. And it actually really knocked my confidence with development at the time, where I was seeing issues like this on screen when I thought I'd written the perfect function, and along with all that constant referring to Stack Overflow and praying to the coding gods that this would be the time it worked, it simply just didn't work out like that. And although it was a successful project, it had its frustrations as well. And because I thought this was a problem with me rather than something every developer experiences, I wanted to move on and away from development. So when Cyberduck approached me to work with them in 2013 as a new business executive, it felt like the perfect opportunity. I could still be involved in those techie projects, but I only needed to sell them. I didn't have to code them and fix the bugs. I could just get other people like developers to do that for me. So it felt like the perfect fit. And so here I am 10 years later, where I still have that passion for coding, which I'm very thankful for, but I put way less pressure on myself. And the day job is something I'm actually good at, and that's selling. So what I didn't consider at the time was that sales also has its challenges, especially if you don't have the deep knowledge of the services you sell. And that's where developers can really save the day, in my opinion. So for today's webinar, I want to share what I've learned with you, including the why, how, and where of new business, so you can become a star among your team and peers and pick up some new skills along the way. First, why would you want to get involved in the sales process and what benefits it brings to you? Second, how you could get involved in that process. And finally, where could you start on your journey towards becoming a sales superstar? By the end of this session, you'll have plenty of inspiration for the areas of interest within sales that look good to you and initial steps to help you get started and get involved during key phases of that process. So let's get started. And to be fair, this is probably the most important question. Why would a developer want to be involved in the sales process? Well, there can be a lot of challenges and frustrations with the projects that you're put on where you haven't had any involvement up to the point you get started working on them. So a lot of the time, developers can find themselves working on boring projects that aren't really testing or stretching their skills, or helping them to learn something new, or simply put, the subject matter isn't very interesting to you. Another common frustration we see is how a project can be scoped either wildly inaccurately or just simply incorrectly. For example, a client could be very pushy to get things delivered to a certain budget or time frame, or the sales team simply doesn't know how to quantify the work involved or doesn't see the complexity that a developer might see. And that can lead to other challenges, like projects being resourced with an unsuitable team, or simply not have enough people on it, leading to a few core people doing a lot of the heavy lifting and perhaps being burnt out by demanding projects. And perhaps one of the most psychologically frustrating ones, and probably the one people remember the most, is working with clients that don't understand development. Sales teams can generally be good at spotting red flags, but we're also prone to jumping into opportunities that seem too good. For example, if a prospective client fires their entire development team to bring in an agency, our first thought as salespeople is to rub our hands at the potential work we could be getting in. But What we do need to consider is what were the underlying factors behind that decision. It could be that the person running that team doesn't understand the development process, and they'll only be happy with their way of working and will fire anyone that gets in their way. That's something I'm sure any developer will be able to pick up on. So how could a developer solve these kinds of challenges and problems? Well, for me, the simple answer is by involving developers from the very start of the sales process. But what benefits does that bring to you? First of all, it enables you to shape projects before they come in, including the scope and the requirements, and not be lumbered with a project that had no dev consultancy or oversight with inappropriate deliverables, budgets, or timeframes. It also puts you in the prime position to work on the projects that you want to deliver. You can see these projects at their earliest stages and tell us if it's a good fit technically and culturally. And naturally, the client is going to want to work with the developer that has been there from the start and knows their challenges inside out. And you can also get insight into what projects are coming in the future, which enables better resource forecasting and hopefully less late nights or last minute crunches for you. And getting involved in the sales cycle also helps you to build rapport and chemistry with the client side team. More and more now during the sales cycle, client teams are actually expecting to meet the people they'll be working with on the project. So that means there's a bit of a shift in our role as salespeople, where we're becoming more of a conductor for an orchestra, let's say, where we're rallying the right team together and helping give the audience, which is the client, what they want to see and hear. And that's you. And our developers tell me that one of the most rewarding parts of being involved in the sales process is how they can feel like heroes to the rest of the team, both our team and the client's team. If a project is especially complex, developers can be the difference between winning and losing that work. And knowing that is a very powerful thing. So we as a sales team love it when you share your ideas, your expertise and vision with the client to help us deliver a game-changing pitch that blows everyone else out of the water. And the final benefit to supporting sales is that you can build your own profile and advance your career. From what I've seen and experienced over the years, the developers that progress are not only technically capable, but they're able to communicate in a way that goes beyond code and focusing on delivering insight and speaking in a language that clients, especially those who are non-technical, can understand. This includes working in initial conversations, pitches, scoping meetings, workshops, and even at conferences, events, and webinars like this one today. And if you attended our Chief Delivery Officer, Sylvan's previous webinar in this series a few weeks ago, you'll have learned of his progression from web developer to Chief Delivery Officer now. And from my experience of working with Sylvan since he was technical director, which is about 10 years ago now, he was always getting involved in sales and new business wherever he could. And that's the reality of being a technical practitioner today. There will always be opportunities to help out in new business. You don't have to be a director or a C-level to help out, although I'm sure that would be nice. But over the years, we've had people like Sylvan, people like our current CTO, tech leads, technical architects, and developers, both junior and senior, helping us out in the new business process. And at the end of the day, you'll be bringing skills, experience, and knowledge that no one else has. And that really enables you to immediately add value and showcase your abilities to a wider team. And from what I've seen, it has been those people that get involved in more areas of the business than purely development that do go on to become seniors, leads, managers, and directors, if that's something that interests you in the future. So by this point, you might be thinking, or at least I hope you're thinking, all of this sounds really interesting, but what does it actually look like? Where could I, as a developer, get involved? Well, the good news is there are many places you could get involved, from the very first conversations through to planning the project team at contract sign-off. Saying that, I think it's really simple to just break it down into 5 key stages. The first is the first response. So at this point, a project inquiry has just come through, and it's the new business team's role to respond in a timely and engaging way and start qualifying the project to see if it's right for us. Here, the pressure is super low if you wanted to join in, but the best ways you could join in are to tell us and let us know if you've done this kind of project before, or if you're already familiar with the technology requirements, or have experience in the sector where the client's coming from. This could give us a lot more confidence in positioning ourselves as the right fit. Are there certain details that we should absolutely find out to determine if this project is right for us? If so, we'd love to hear any questions that you want us to ask as well. And time efficiency is a priority both for developers and for sales teams. So with that in mind, providing a quick estimate in terms of work effort, budgets, and timelines could help the team quickly determine if the project is right for you or not. This will enable you to focus on the projects that are best for you and deliver a better experience for those clients that you do choose to focus on. All being well, things will progress to a point where you're having, let's say, a more formal meeting with the client, either face-to-face or remotely in today's hybrid world. At these points, usually a pre-discovery or a scoping workshop is a great time to get involved and really flex your technical chops. This is the perfect opportunity to start planting the seed of how the project should be run and what the technical requirements should be, and really helping to build that ideal project that you've always wanted to work on. So here at this stage, you'll want to consider what expertise and experience you can demonstrate. Similar to the first response, you're showcasing what you've done before and how it's relevant to the client. Only on this occasion, you will have a lot more time and freedom to do a real deep dive into that. So this is really your chance to show how you understand their challenges and how you've solved them before, and position yourself as the best person to work on this project. Another way to show your expertise is in how you challenge the brief. A lot of our clients want us to be proactive and to come to them with new ideas rather than just implement the ideas and requirements that they've given us. So most of the time, a client will have a project and a way of working and requirements in mind, and they'll approach us with that. And we'll need to draw on your experience, and that will enable you to find ways where their ideas may not be the best, and how there could be better ways of doing things. So challenging a brief is always important, but it can be a tricky thing because you'll need to do it diplomatically or occasionally risk offending the client. And that brings me to my final point here, which is to communicate appropriately for the audience you are speaking to. Some will be technical and you can speak to them in a similar language, but others won't know their PHP from their HTML. And so adapting your communication style means helping a non-technical person understand the benefits of your approach and relating it back to their challenges without getting too down into the technical detail. And this will help you challenge the brief in a more diplomatic way as well, because these people will see that you can understand the problems from their perspective, but still provide valuable solutions. Depending on how things go following those meetings and workshops, you'll probably be asked to start scoping out how you'll deliver the requirements. And this includes documenting your approach, the level of effort involved, and estimating how long the delivery will take and what teams are needed. And this part of the process requires a completely different set of skills to anything before it. And that's written communication skills. And believe me, writing a winning tender or proposal in itself is a skill. And that aside, it's also a great opportunity for you to showcase skills that you might not be able to display in your typical day-to-day when you're coding. Often after scoping sessions, the client will still go away and compile their own brief. So the key here to responding to this is to make sure you understand it in full and then explore how you'll deliver their requirements. If you notice there are parts that you help to shape in their brief, then you can be confident that you're in a good position and these clients are listening to you. Next, documenting how you'd approach a project is very different here and very important, and is quite different to simply discussing it with your dev team. Here, like in previous stages, you'll be communicating to a non-technical audience. So again, make sure you focus on the benefits and value of your approach rather than every little nitty-gritty technical detail. And if you're not sure how you'd even get started, why not peer review someone else's work first? You do it with code, so why not do it with proposals? Sometimes the best way to start can be to see how others have done it before you and understand how these kinds of responses should be written, how deep they go, and how they could be improved for future proposals that you end up working on. And now we're getting to the part of the process that people often feel is the highest pressure, and that's the pitch. While this can feel daunting for some, if you've already built up a good relationship with the client team by being involved from the earliest stages, and you put in a strong proposal or response to their brief, then in reality, this will simply be a continuation of all those conversations you've had. And if anything, the client team will actually be rooting for you. After all, they're not going to invite people to pitch if they wanted to see them fail or if they didn't trust them. So they want you to do well here. And most pitches will be a slideshow to the client, very similar to what I'm doing now. And so one of my golden rules to people is to build their own slides. If they're the ones producing the content themselves, they'll already know that content like the back of their hand. And of course, us in the sales team can give you some guidance on what to include in the key talking points. And we can make your slides look pretty as well. But the point here is to know what you're saying better than anyone else in the room. Another way you can do that is to rehearse early and rehearse regularly. So just to give you some context into my preparation for today, I wrote the entire narrative for this presentation myself. I had my first ideation session way back on the 9th of February, so a month and a half ago. And naturally, I do presentations like this all the time as part of my role, and I've been in sales for 10 years, but I still rehearse every presentation that I do. And why do I do that? Because I don't want to be that guy stammering over my words or trying to figure out what I'm saying at the most critical point. And it gives me so much more confidence when I head into the pitch as well. And I guarantee you will feel the benefit to rehearsing as well. Never feel bad about wanting to rehearse. And my final point here is to be conversational. Sometimes pitches can come off as scripted, especially if you don't know the source material well enough. And that's why owning your content and rehearsing is so important. But if all else fails, just try to make it sound like you're having a conversation with them. And people hate getting death by PowerPoint. I think we all know that. So you could, in fact, even make part of the pitch interactive, such as running a demo or holding a mini workshop. Really, there are a lot of ways to go different with a pitch. It doesn't always need to be slide decks. And probably another important point to remember is that the nerves never go away. So if you're feeling like you'll be too nervous for a pitch, over time with experience, you'll learn how to manage that. But even me, I still get nervous before a pitch, even after taking all these steps. Like I say, you just learn to manage it better. So I was talking to a few colleagues the other day about how to determine if a developer is effective in the sales process. In reality, there are many, many ways you could evaluate that. You could be fantastic at writing, you could be a brilliant presenter, you could even be a great listener by understanding the client's pain points. But at the end of the day, they all boil down to the same underlying skill, and that's communication. And the simplest way I can put it is this: if you can explain it to your colleagues, like your sales team, and make them know how to sell it, you can explain it and sell it to a client as well. And you can do that verbally, visually, and in writing, or all three if you're really up for it. So I'm sure you're all thinking by now, wow, Tom, this all sounds great. I can't wait to start selling, and quite rightly too. Unfortunately, there's many ways to get started with this. I recommend first thinking about which area of the sales cycle feels right to you. And as I said before, each phase generally favors a specific communication style. And we're all better at communicating in some ways more than others. Likewise, as phases progress towards the pitch, things can become more complex, intense, challenging, and perhaps a bit higher pressure as well. So if you want to build your confidence from the ground level, focus on the earlier stages of the process and work your way up from there. And for me, the best way to get started is to simply speak to your sales team and find relevant RFPs or project inquiries that the team are working on. At Cyberduck, most of our new projects still come from our initial contact form on our website. And I wouldn't be doing my job now if I didn't invite you to use this today and get in touch if there's a tricky Laravel challenge that you'd like some help with. But we as a sales team are always looking to understand what kinds of technologies and industries our teams have experience with, so we can throw that into the mix when an inquiry comes through and put ourselves in pole position. So please do reach out to see if there's any interesting projects. And this feeds into my next point, which is providing some initial ideas. If you do have specific knowledge of an industry, the technology that the client requires, or have even solved a similar challenge before, approaching your team with quick solutions or ideas of what you've done in the past can save a lot of time. And not only that, but if it was work you enjoyed or the company looks like one you'll enjoy working with, then contributing early will not only increase our chances of getting the project, but you'll probably be the one to lead or work on it too. And nothing can beat the direct FaceTime you get with a client, which is why joining early conversations can be so interesting, as you'll be discussing their challenges and goals out in the open and how you can solve them. And in our experience, a more consultative sales process, as opposed to one that is pushy and trying to force the client down a certain path, is more likely to lead to success for us. So if you work with your client to empathize with them and their current position and understand where they want to be, and show them that you have the knowledge, the insight, skills, and experience to take them there, then you're definitely onto a winner. So in these early conversations, the new business person will still lead and uncover the goals. They'll qualify the project, and to an extent, they'll be able to talk about past relevant projects. But for that hands-on day-to-day experience, nothing beats a developer in the room. And similar to that last point, getting involved in a pitch can be an incredible learning experience and a great way to meet more members of the client's project team, stakeholders, and decision makers than you may get access to during the project itself. And it's often during pitches that you'll uncover intelligence that you may never have heard before. And although you'll be presenting a solution, things can still change and be shaped by what you discuss on the day. And many developers I work with don't always feel confident during their first few pitches, and that's perfectly normal, and they'll worry they might make a mistake. So there are some great ways to overcome this. There's the steps I mentioned earlier, like rehearsing. And if not, you can always start out small, either with a lower priority project or something that's a bit lower value, or just with a few slides for a much larger presentation. And if you're really unsure, you can see if you can find opportunities with the rest of the team to just cut in and add a few little nuggets of wisdom, or ask questions to the client and engage with them through questions and answers. Another way you can get involved is similar to how our Laravel technical lead, Tiago, recorded this video here, which we've got a snippet of. With a pre-recording, you can do things in your own time and at your own pace, and make sure you're really happy with it before we share with the client. And that's a great way to build your presentation skills in a low pressure way. And in particular, technical projects where specialist knowledge or experience is required, sadly, there is only so much the sales team can do, which is why this creates a brilliant opportunity for you to shine by supporting a written response and sharing your knowledge and showing us how it's done. There's nothing that adds more value to a response than having an expert collaborate with us on it. So I recommend seeing if there are any technical proposals or tenders that your team are writing and seeing where you might be able to help. Chances are they'll find something for you. And like with pitches, it's perfectly fine to start small here. Start with one element of one answer or a specific piece of a project scope, and then scale it up from there to tackle an entire answer or a response about the full technical plan, and just continue building yourself up like that. In most cases, the new business team will still lead on this, so don't worry about being made to do too much, but they have a far greater chance of winning this work and putting you on it if there's specialist input from developers like you. And you can also look at getting involved in sales outside of the sales process itself. So you're probably already working on projects where you feel like things could be done better, or you'd like more time to work on it to deliver some great new features, reduce the technical debt, or many other things you want to achieve. The quickest win I can possibly think of, if you were to go away and do one thing today, and it also comes with very little pressure as you know the client inside out, is to speak to the account or project manager of the project you're already working on and see if there's opportunities to do more, or meet with the client and discuss your ideas. If you have retainers or budgets up for renewal, now is the perfect time to do this. And it's also worth speaking to your marketing team as well. No doubt there'll be upcoming campaigns that promote your product or service where you can help. For example, Tiago, who I mentioned before, he contributed to one of our most recent white papers and now supports us with following up with people who downloaded it. In fact, I think some of you here today might have heard from him in the past week or so. So by working with your marketing team, you can share your thought leadership with the world and start engaging with the people who read it, broadening your network, but also helping you to really wrestle with your ideas by putting them down in writing. And you could go further with this by attending conferences and events, which I'm sure many of you do already. And us at Cyberduck, we're also regular Laracon attendees in terms of simply being in the crowd, having stands, and delivering talks. And attending non-technical events is another step that will make you think differently, as you'll now need to consider how you break down your technical concepts in a way non-technical people can understand. And the pinnacle of all of this is physically putting yourself out there, either on a speaking circuit or producing videos and content online. And this combines everything I've said before, really. It gives you the chance to explain your thinking and get ideas out of your head. It enables you to engage with audiences you want to reach. And you have to adjust your communication style to the platform you're on and the audience you're speaking to, combining that written, verbal, and visual communication I was talking about earlier. And Sylvan in this slide and the previous webinar host does a great job of this. And he has his own YouTube channel separate from Cyberduck. And he has webinars of his own coming up that Dan will be more than happy to tell you about as well. But before he does that, I'd love to throw this back to you. Which area of the new business process interests you the most? And what's the first thing you're going to do to get started? Let me know in the chat. And if you have any questions or if there's anything, something you'd like to discuss with me more, I'll be more than happy to answer them either here or offline while Dan wraps up. Thank you all for your time and attention today. I'm looking forward to talking with you more. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Tom. It's a brilliant talk. Just before we get into the Q&A, quick reminder, we have our next webinar in the series on 21st of April. So we'll be back with Sylvan, and it's all going to be around strategy, why it matters, and then how you as a developer can start to interpret and challenge stakeholder and client needs. So please do join us for that one. Again, don't need to do anything. We'll be sending you emails with the links and reminders. In the meantime, if you haven't already, Tom's just spoken about it, but we have a really fantastic white paper that's a great side piece to this entire series. Goes very much into our own processes when it comes to Laravel projects. So you can either download it using the Q&R code there. Otherwise, I'm going to drop it into the chat in just a second. And I think with that, we can jump into some questions. And one I'd really like to start with you on, Tom, is we've spoken a lot about how, you know, very much when you start getting involved with more pitching, presenting, you can get nerves and things like that, and it's very natural. You've always obviously given some tips already. Is there any other kind of ways that you've seen at Cyberduck where developers have started to get more comfortable with that kind of public speaking?
Yeah, sure. So I think a great example of that, and I don't know if he's going to be on this webinar or not, and I hope he doesn't mind me calling him out, is Ramon, one of our front-end technical leads. He's been doing talks, I don't know, for probably longer than I've been at Cyberduck, and he's always found opportunities to share his thoughts and insights with the wider development community. So what he did is he started off relatively small at local meetups and began sharing his thoughts. And that's with a very specific development community there as well. And it was through that experience that he became more confident about talking to people that don't have that technical mindset, and people that maybe need to be educated on the benefits of a robust front-end development process. And that's how it worked and built up. He started small, local meetups, engaging with those who already know the topic, but it allows him to flesh out his ideas so that when he gets to speaking to someone that doesn't know this as much, he knows how he can educate them and where to start. So yeah, I think that's Ramon's a great example of that, and he's now built himself up to be talking at events like South by Southwest and all sorts of different things. So yeah, he's I think definitely an inspirational example to look to.
Yeah, very much so. And I guess another kind of side piece of that as well is, do you have any recommendations for some of the developers here in terms of how they can help just, I guess, upskill the new business teams so that they're more prepared to go into pitches when it comes to knowledge around sort of technology solutions or Laravel?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because my priority as a new business director is to make sure our sales team is as self-sustainable as possible. As much as we love involving developers in the new business process, we want to be able to have these conversations with clients ourselves and talk through the pros and cons of certain development paths or feature recommendations or implementing the requirements that a client has. So yeah, for me, I want to make sure that we can talk to a client as well as a developer could. And so the best ways I find of doing that are to have developers speaking to our sales team and sharing those experiences of what it was like to work on certain client projects, what we delivered. And like I said before, if those developers can talk to us in a way that is easy to explain, that we can explain it to a client, then we can sell it, the developer can sell it, and it means that we're all singing from the same hymn sheet here. So yeah, that's for me what it is making sure you have that time to speak to the sales team, to tell them about your work. Lunch and learns are quite often a good way for that, to demonstrate what you've done on a project. If you have all hands meetings or anything like that, that's also a great way. But even during the induction processes, let's say we're bringing in someone new into the sales team, making sure they're meeting with developers during those initial onboarding steps is really key, so they can understand the projects right from the very start of their career at the company as well.
Yeah, it's brilliant. We've got a great question here as well from Tristan, which is, if you want junior contribution, do you have career development plans or levels for them to map their growth?
Yeah, so I think it varies for company to company in terms of what processes and systems and solutions your HR team implements. And I think that's probably where it needs to start, is it needs to be on a cultural level, that this direction and this guidance is being shaped by the company on an operational level, as well as on a development level, and to an extent the sales team level as well. So we use tools like an app called Progression, which helps us to map out all the different steps of what they would need to achieve on the sales side, specifically in terms of rating skills in bid writing or pitching or contributing to initial meetings on a scale of 1 to 5. And we document what those scales look like, in terms of a 1 is able to attend an initial conversation and ask some questions, whereas a 5 is able to lead that initial conversation and almost make it run like a workshop, just as an example. And what we're able to do is then give that to the development team as a guidance on what our initial expectations for them. And certainly for junior developers, our expectation is going to be on that lower pressure, lower input side, just to build them up. And then as they get more comfortable with the sales process and speaking to people beyond their own developers, as they become more comfortable with that, then building up as they go, increasing the demand, maybe increasing the complexity of the project.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Got another question here is, do you think it's harder for developers to get more involved with new business now that lots of agencies are either remote first or hybrid?
I don't think that necessarily has to be a blocker. And if anything, I feel like it brings with it its own set of challenges and differences compared to when we were in the office. I think one of the more, I won't say interesting challenges, but one of the more complex challenges is managing utilization and making sure that developers are still delivering billable work while balancing that with potentially helping out with new business and sales. But as the question is about the hybrid working model, I'll focus on that, and the utilization can be for another time. We could take that offline. But with working remotely, I find, if anything, it's helped to increase the collaboration in some ways, because you can bring people together in their own environments that they're comfortable with. And it's super easy to just jump onto a Zoom call. The developer already has their environment, their working environment in front of them. And it's a great way to, co-create ways of working that enable them to focus on what they need to do with the pitch or the sales process, without bringing them, like pulling them up, taking them into a meeting room and trying to discuss it there. They can kind of do everything in the comfort of how they work normally. But being hybrid does have its advantages as well, because if there are times that we need to establish, I don't know, some kind of war room, or bring people together in one place, then having everyone there in one room is great for that. But I find that's more useful either during the initial stages, when we're briefing teams on kickoffs and what the client requires and how we're going to shape this pitch or this sales cycle. And then maybe towards the end, where let's say we are gearing up for a pitch, or we need some crunch time to work on slides or produce a written response. That's where it's good to have people in the same room and all working together on the same response and making sure we're talking to each other. But from my experience, that environment can be replicated through what we call Zoom bridges. It's probably a concept a lot of people are already aware of, and it's nothing new. But in the run up to pitches or submission deadlines or anything like that, we just open up a Zoom bridge in our Slack channel. People are free to come and go as they please. And as soon as they finish one meeting and they have time to work on this, they'll come and jump on, discuss what needs to be done. I can brief them, and they can kind of get on with it in the comfort of their own home. They don't have to be in a room to do it. And it just means you haven't got all that getting up from your desk, going to and fro. You can just jump straight in, straight out as and when you need. So in some ways it's easier, in some ways it's harder, but we found ways to make it work, and it's definitely possible.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So I think that's it for our session today. So I'm just going to wrap things up very quickly. So firstly, big thank you everyone so much for joining us. We really do hope you enjoyed this session. As I said, next week we'll send out the full recording so you can catch up on it again then. In the meantime, also, thank you, Tom, for your talk. It's always fantastic to hear this stuff. And again, we really hope that everyone has walked away with some really key insights from the way that we do things at CyberDuck.